Asana. The problem before us may be stated thus simply. A man wishes to control his mind, to be able to think one chosen thought for as long as he will without interruption. As previously remarked, the first difficulty arises from the body, which keeps on asserting its presence by causing its victim to itch, and in other ways to be distracted. He wants to stretch, scratch, sneeze. This nuisance is so persistent that the Hindus, in their scientific way, devised a special practice for quieting it. The word asana means posture, but as with all words which have caused debate, its exact meaning has altered, and it is used in several distinct senses by various authors. The great authority on yoga is Patanjali. He says, asana is that which is firm and pleasant. This may be taken as meaning the result of success in the practice. Again, Sankhya says, posture is that which is steady and easy. And again, any posture which is steady and easy is an asana. There is no other rule. Any posture will do. In a sense, this is true because any posture becomes uncomfortable sooner or later. The steadiness and easiness mark a definite attainment, as will be explained later on. Hindu books such as the Shiva Samhita give countless postures, many, perhaps most of them, impossible for the average European. Others insist that the head, neck, and spine should be kept vertical and straight for reasons connected with the subject of prana, which will be dealt with in its proper place. The positions illustrated in Liber E, Equinox 1, I, and Cephens, also see Appendix 7 and Figure 21 in this volume, form the best guide. The extreme of asana is practiced by those yogis who remain in one position without moving, except in the case of absolute necessity, during their whole lives. One should not criticize such persons without a thorough knowledge of the subject. Such knowledge has not yet been published. Footnotes. 1. Yoga is the general name for that form of meditation which aims at the uniting of subject and object, for yoga is the root from which is derived the Latin word jugum and the English word yoke. 2. Sankhya is not a person, but one of the 6 schools of Hindu philosophy which is most closely related to yoga. Ed. 3. Vasu, Sri Sachandra, Shiva Samhita. Sacred Books of the Hindus, New Delhi, Oriental, 1979. 4. Here are 4 asanas. 1. Sit in a chair, head up, back straight, knees together, hands on knees, eyes closed, the god. 2. Kneel, buttocks resting on the heels, toes turned back, back and head straight, hands on thighs, the dragon. 3. Stand. Hold left ankle with right hand and alternately practice right ankle and left hand, etc. Free forefinger on lips, the ibis. 4. Sit. Left heel pressing up anus, right foot poised on its toes, the heel covering the phallus. Arms stretched out over the knees and back straight. The thunderbolt. However, one may safely assert that since the great men previously mentioned did not do this, it will not be necessary for their followers. Let us then choose a suitable position and consider what happens. There is a sort of happy medium between rigidity and limpness. The muscles are not to be strained, and yet they are not allowed to be altogether slack. It is difficult to find a good descriptive word. Braced is perhaps the best. A sense of physical alertness is desirable. Think of the tiger about to spring, or of the oarsman waiting for the gun. After a little, there will be cramp and fatigue. The student must now set his teeth and go through with it. The minor sensations of itching, etc., will be found to pass away if they are resolutely neglected, but the cramp and fatigue may be expected to increase until the end of the practice. One may begin with half an hour or an hour. The student must not mind if the process of quitting the asana involves several minutes of the acutest agony. It will require a good deal of determination to persist day after day, for in most cases, it will be found that the discomfort and pain, instead of diminishing, tend to increase. On the other hand, if the student pay no attention, fail to watch the body, an opposite phenomenon may occur. He shifts to ease himself without knowing that he has done so. To avoid this, choose a position which naturally is rather cramped and awkward, and in which slight changes are not sufficient to bring ease. Otherwise, for the first few days, the student may even imagine that he has conquered the position. In fact, in all these practices, their apparent simplicity is such that the beginner is likely to wonder what all the fuss is about, perhaps to think that he is specially gifted. Similarly, a man who has never touched a golf club will take his umbrella and carelessly hole a putt, which would frighten the best putter alive. In a few days, however, in all cases, the discomforts will begin. As you go on, they will begin earlier in the course of the hour's exercise. The disinclination to practice at all may become almost unconquerable. One must warn the student against imagining that some other position would be easier to master than the one he has selected. Once you begin to change about you are lost, perhaps the reward is not so far distant. It will happen one day that the pain is suddenly forgotten. The fact of the presence of the body is forgotten. And one will realize that during the whole of one's previous life, the body was always on the borderland of consciousness. And that consciousness, a consciousness of pain. And at this moment, one will further realize with an indescribable feeling of relief that not only is this position, which has been so painful, the very ideal of physical comfort, but that all other conceivable positions of the body are uncomfortable. This feeling represents success. There will be no further difficulty in the practice. One will get into one's asana with almost the same feeling as that with which a tired man gets into a hot bath. And while he is in that position, the body may be trusted to send him no message that might disturb his mind. Other results of this practice are described by Hindu authors, but they do not concern us at present. Our first obstacle has been removed, and we can continue with the others. Chapter 2, Pranayama, and its parallel in speech, Mantra Yoga. The connection between breath and mind will be fully discussed in Speaking of the Magic Sword, but it may be useful to premise a few details of a practical character. You may consult various Hindu manuals and the writing of Kuang Tse for various notable theories as to method and result. But in this skeptical system, one had better content oneself with statements which are not worth the trouble of doubting. The ultimate idea of meditation being to still the mind, it may be considered a useful preliminary to still consciousness of all the functions of the body. This has been dealt with in the chapter on asana. One may, however, mention that some yogis carry it to the point of trying to stop the beating of the heart. Whether this be desirable or no, it would be useless to the beginner, so he will endeavor to make the breathing very slow and very regular. The rules for this practice are given in Liber CC. The best way to time the breathing, once some little skill has been acquired, with a word to bear witness, is by the use of a mantra. The mantra acts on the thoughts in very much the way pranayama does upon the breath. The thought is bound down to a recurring cycle. Any intruding thoughts are thrown off by the mantra, just as pieces of putty would be from a flywheel. And the swifter the wheel, the more difficult would it be for anything to stick. This is the proper way to practice a mantra. Utter it as loudly and slowly as possible 10 times, then not quite so loudly and a very little faster 10 times more. Continue this process until there is nothing but a rapid movement of the lips. This movement should be continued with increased velocity and diminishing intensity until the mental muttering entirely absorbs the physical. The student is by this time absolutely still, with the mantra racing in his brain. He should, however, continue to speed it up until he reaches his limit, at which he should continue for as long as possible, and then cease the practice by reversing the process above described. Any sentence may be used as a mantra, and possibly the Hindus are correct in thinking that there is a particular sentence best suited to any particular man. Some men might find the liquid mantras of the Quran slide too easily, so that it would be possible to continue another. Footnotes 1 in Part 2, Chapter 7, ed. 2 Chuangtzu, Zhangzhou and Pinyin, vols 39-40, SBE series, Oxford University Press, 1891. Ed. 3 in Equinox 1's 7th and Appendix 7 of this book. Train of thought without disturbing the mantra. One is supposed while saying the mantra to meditate upon its meaning. This suggests that the student might construct for himself a mantra which should represent the universe in sound, as the pentacle should do in form. Occasionally, a mantra may be given, i.e., heard in some unexplained manner during a meditation. One man, for example, used the words, "and strive to see in everything the will of God." To another, while engaged in killing thoughts, came the words, "and push it down," apparently referring to the action of the inhibitory centers which he was using. By keeping on with this, he got his result. The ideal mantra should be rhythmical, one might even say musical, but there should be sufficient emphasis on some syllable to assist the faculty of attention. The best mantras are of medium length, so far as the beginner is concerned. If the mantra is too long, one is apt to forget it unless one practices very hard for a great length of time. On the other hand, mantras of a single syllable, such as Om, are rather jerky. The rhythmical idea is lost. Here are a few useful mantras. 1. Om. 2. Om Tat Sat Om. This mantra is purely spondaic. 2. Om Tat Sat 3. Om Mani Padme Hum. 2 trochees between 2 caesaras. 3. Om Mani Padme Hum. 4. Om Shivaya Vashi. 3 trochees. Note that Shi means rest, the absolute or male aspect of the deity. Va is energy, the manifested or female side of the deity. This mantra therefore expresses the whole course of the universe from 0 through the finite back to 0. Footnotes. See Part 2, Chapter 9, Ed. 2. However, in saying a mantra containing the word Om, one sometimes forgets the other words and remains concentrated, repeating the Om at intervals. But this is the result of a practice already begun, not the beginning of a practice. 3. Said as 2 long syllables. Crowley is using technical terms borrowed from poetry. Ed. 4. 2 long or stressed syllables between 2 pauses. Ed. 5. Taken together, it is Shiva. Ed. Ivoa. Om Shivaya Vashi. Om Shivaya Vashi 5. Allah. The syllables of this are accented equally, with a certain pause between them, and are usually combined by fakirs with a rhythmical motion of the body to and fro. Hua Allahu Alazi La ilaha illa Hua. Here are some longer ones. 7. The famous Gayatri. Om. Tat Savitar Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dio Yona Prakodayat. Scan this as trochaic tetrameters. 8. Hua Allahu Akhad. Allahu Asamad. Lam Yalid Walam Yulad. Walam Yakun Lahu Kufuwan Ahad. 9. This mantra is the holiest of all that are or can be. It is from the Stele of Revealing. Akadua tuf ur abu bi achefu dudu ner af and nuteru. Ein. Akadua tuf ur bi ach footnotes. 1. The Gayatri mantra from the Rig Veda. Ed. 2. Trochaic tetrameter is a metrical way of reading the mantra, as in poetry. It refers to a line of 4 trochaic feet. Tetrameter means that the poem has 4 trochees. A trochee is a long or stressed syllable followed by a short or unstressed syllable. Ed. 3. See the Equinox of the 7, also part 4 of the present volume. The language is Egyptian. Such are enough for selection. There are many other mantras. Sri Sabapathy Swami gives a particular one for each of the chakras. But let the student select one mantra and master it thoroughly. You have not even begun to master a mantra until it continues unbroken through sleep. This is much easier than it sounds. Some schools advocate practicing a mantra with the aid of instrumental music and dancing. Certainly very remarkable effects are obtained in the way of magic powers. Whether great spiritual results are equally common is a doubtful point. Persons wishing to study them may remember that the Sahara Desert is within 3 days of London. And no doubt, the CDI Sawa would be glad to accept pupils. This discussion of the parallel science of mantra yoga has led us far indeed from the subject of pranayama. Footnotes. 1. Meanings of mantras. 1. Om is the sound produced by breathing forcibly from the back of the throat and gradually closing the mouth. The 3 sounds represent the creative, preservative, and destructive principles. There are many more points about this, enough to fill a volume. 2. Oh, that existent O, an aspiration after reality, truth. 3. The jewel in the lotus, Amen, refers to Buddha and Harpocrates, but also the symbolism of the rosy cross. 4. Gives the cycle of creation, peace manifesting as power, power dissolving in peace. 5. God of Gods, title of 56, the sum of the first 11 numbers. 6. He is God, and there is no other God than He. 7. Oh, let us all meditate on the adorable light of that divine Savitri, the interior sun, etc. May she enlighten our minds. 8. Say He is God alone, God the eternal. He begets not and is not begotten, nor is there the like unto Him anyone. 9. Unity utmost showed. I adore the might of thy breath, supreme and terrible God, who makest the gods and death to tremble before thee. I adore thee. 2. Sabapathy Swami was the author of Vedantic Raj Yoga, Ancient Tantra Yoga of Rishis, 1880, RPT, 1977. It is possible that Crawley met him in India in 1902 and utilized some of his techniques in Liber HHH. See Appendix 7 in the present volume. The Swami was born in Madras, Chennai, in 1840 and was initially educated in a missionary school before learning yoga. He was reputed to have achieved samadhi by the age of 29 and went on to teach and publish around India. Ed. 3. The chakras are the 7 centers of subtle energy in the body, ranging from 1. Sahasrara chakra at the crown of the head down to 7. Muladhara chakra at the vas deferens, near the anus. See Figure 5, p. 70. Ed. 4. An Islamic mystical brotherhood founded in Meknes in Morocco in the 15th century, which teaches trance meditations. Ed. Pranayama is notably useful in quieting the emotions and appetites, and, whether by reason of the mechanical pressure which it asserts, or by the thorough combustion which it assures in the lungs, it seems to be admirable from the standpoint of health. Digestive troubles in particular are very easy to remove in this way. It purifies both the body and the lower functions of the mind, and should be practiced certainly never less than 1 hour daily by the serious student. 4 hours is a better period, a golden mean. 16 hours is too much for most people. Image Figure 5, the 7 chakras. From the head downwards, Sahasrara, Ajna, Vishuddha, Anahata, Manipura, Svadhisthana, Muladhara. Footnotes 1. Emphatically. 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 It is impossible to combine pranayama properly performed with emotional thought. It should be resorted to immediately, at all times during life, when calm is threatened. 2. On the whole, the ambulatory practices are more generally useful to the health than the sedentary, for in this way walking in fresh air are assured. But some of the sedentary practice should be done and combined with meditation. Of course, when actually racing to get results, walking is a distraction. 3. The Equinox Un4 P90. Let me know if you need further assistance with this text. Chapter 2 of Aleister Crowley's text focuses on pranayama and mantra yoga, 2 practices used in meditation and spiritual exercises. Here's a breakdown of the main ideas and concepts in this chapter. 1. Pranayama, control of breath. Purpose. Pranayama is the practice of controlling one's breath to calm the mind, body, and emotions. In this context, the aim is to help the practitioner reach a state of mental stillness and concentration. Benefits. Pranayama is described as beneficial for both physical and mental health. It can quiet emotions and reduce cravings or impulses, which makes it an effective tool for overcoming distractions and focusing the mind. Health effects. Crowley highlights that pranayama aids digestion and can help remove physical impurities. The act of deep, controlled breathing ensures thorough oxygenation and combustion in the lungs, which is beneficial to the body's systems. Practice recommendations. Frequency. For a serious practitioner, Crowley suggests 1 hour of pranayama daily, with 4 hours as an ideal goal. 16 hours is seen as excessive for most people. Technique. Although specifics are not detailed in this section, Crowley emphasizes slow and regular breathing, aiming to make each breath cycle deliberate and controlled. Part 2. Mantra Yoga. Use of mantras in meditation. Definition. Mantra yoga involves the repetition of a mantra, a word, phrase, or sound intended to focus the mind and exclude other thoughts. The repetition of the mantra creates a mental cycle, making it harder for stray thoughts to intrude. Mantra mechanics. Crowley describes how a mantra works similarly to a spinning flywheel. Just as a wheel resists external forces that might disrupt its spin, a mantra keeps the mind focused and repels distractions. Practice method. Start by repeating the mantra loudly and slowly 10 times, then gradually reduce the volume and increase the speed over successive repetitions. Eventually, the practitioner should reach a point where only the lips move, and then move to silent mental repetition, with the mantra racing in the mind. This helps to absorb the physical repetition into pure mental concentration. The goal is to make the mantra so ingrained in the mind that it continues unbroken even during sleep, indicating mastery. Choosing a mantra. Mantras can be any sentence or sound, though some are more effective. Crowley lists examples. Om. a single syllable often used in meditation but may lack rhythm due to its brevity. Om Tat Sat Om and Om Mani Padme Hum, longer, rhythmical mantras that create a more stable mental rhythm. Specific religious mantras. Crowley includes mantras from different spiritual traditions, like the Gayatri mantra from Hinduism and Islamic and Egyptian phrases. He also mentions that some practitioners receive their mantras intuitively or during meditation. Tips for mastery. Crowley advises selecting one mantra and using it exclusively until it continues automatically, even through sleep. Using mantras with additional practices. Incorporation of music and movement. Some traditions practice mantras with music and dance, which can amplify effects and produce altered states of consciousness. While these methods can enhance magical effects, Crowley suggests that they may not necessarily lead to genuine spiritual insights. Mantra and chakras. Crowley mentions that Sri Sabapathy Swami assigns specific mantras to different chakras, energy centers in the body, but he encourages students to focus on mastering one mantra first. 4. Relationship between breath and mantra. Parallel practice. Pranayama, breath control, and mantra yoga, mantra repetition, serve similar purposes. Each is a tool to anchor the mind. Pranayama anchors the mind through breath, while mantra yoga does so through sound and repetition. Combining practices. Once basic mastery is achieved, some practitioners combine these techniques for deeper concentration. The rhythm and steadiness developed through pranayama can enhance the effectiveness of mantra repetition. Summary. In Chapter 2, Crowley explores pranayama and mantra yoga as complementary practices to still the mind and promote focus. He emphasizes the need for consistency and dedication, with suggestions on specific methods and mantras to help students develop concentration and mental resilience. Through regular practice of these techniques, practitioners aim to achieve a state where their body and mind are fully quiet, preparing them for deeper meditative and mystical experiences.